that up and she keeps that up in good shape. You may notice as the longer you're out birding or doing anything out in the woods or whatever, you build your curiosity. And with some experience, you start wondering, while I'm seeing these birds, well, what are they eating? What are these dragonflies how about these mushrooms I'm seeing here? Candace has a ton of experience now as a first-rate birder, but also is doing things out in the woods with mushrooms. If I have a mushroom question, I ask her. She is she's a master naturalist, citizen scientist. She's the director of library services at Hawkeye Community College. There's a lot of experience out wandering about, is what we're going to say, and that's basically what her talk is. So we're going to welcome Candace, and you got your mic and stuff.
Getting it turned on.
We got it. All right.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Go to it, Candace.
Okay. Well, I'm a little nervous to talk in front of you all, but I'm pretty much preaching to the choir, I believe. So you see, hopefully the people on Zoom can see and hear my screen. It's been said that not all who wander are lost. And I certainly do identify with that concept, whether I'm out birding or biking or hiking. I'm just out to discover what nature might present me. And I really have found immense enjoyment, happiness, edification, and solace in nature. So today I wanted to share with you some of my favorite observations and experiences in the natural world. And maybe they'll inspire you to wander and wonder as well. So curiosity, I think, is part of being human. And it's what makes us those lifelong learners. And so I'm going to encourage you to embrace your curiosity and just take every opportunity to learn more about the world that you're experiencing. So let me just tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm just a Wyoming country girl. I'm in the green cowboy hat, playing in the dirt with my twin sister. And this is where I grew up in Southeast Wyoming, where we have immense skies and never-ending horizons and lots of beauty and history. In fact, the county where we live is where you'll find Fort Laramie that you all learned about in history. And you can also see the original Oregon trail ruts still today. This is what we get to see every night. And my mom said she never tired of seeing the sunset over Laramie Peak. Anytime you see the diamond brand, that is our brand for our cattle ranch. And these are my brother's pictures. I'm delighted to share those with you. So we grew up, really loving nature, outside all the time. And I wanted to share with you some of the sounds of my childhood, some of the calls you might recognize. So the Western meadowlark is the Wyoming state bird, and it is my absolute favorite bird song. And I learned as an adult that Western meadowlarks are actually here in Iowa. And it's really fun to hear them singing in tandem with the Eastern meadowlarks. You probably recognize that mournful coo of the mourning dove with the beautiful blue eyeliner. Who can tell me what the third bird is? Say's Phoebe, yes. So there's been some birders who've been out west. And fun fact, when PRAS hosted the 2014 IOU conference, which is the state birding conference, there was a Say's Phoebe seen at Sweet Marsh. So that was a really, really cool rarity to be enjoyed. So while I could identify birds and I enjoyed them and their calls, I still wasn't a birder when I was young. I hadn't found my spark bird yet until I discovered this. And yeah, who can blame me? Come on, this is a gorgeous bird. I remember seeing it on the bike trail up in Southeast Minnesota when we were riding on the Root River Trail. And that's what hooked me into birding. And the rest is pretty much history. And just like, having the occasion to see this bird, when we're out in nature, it's a lot about serendipity, isn't it? Being in the right place at the right time to see and experience those animals or birds. For example, when my sister and I went to Vilas County, Wisconsin, we were hoping to see, the albino deer. And sure enough, the very first night, there it is, enough to get a blurry photo of, but we were thrilled. Anytime you can observe a peregrine in the wild, it is an awesome experience. And my mom and I had been over hiking on the bluff, and we came back, and this is a juvenile bird because you can tell that it's brown, and it is doing exactly what a peregrine would do. Its prey item happens to be a western meadowlark. Yeah, but look at that fierce posture and that fierce glare of the peregrine. And I thought it was rather appropriate to include it tonight because the word peregrine means to wander. And this raptor actually has a global range. All right, now us birders, we're always looking for white things in the fields, aren't we? Sometimes it's a Walmart bag. And then sometimes it's a snowy owl, like at Sweet Marsh. And then sometimes it turns out to be an endangered whooping crane. Yes, and this is a bird. It turned out that it was injured. This is south of New Albin, Iowa. And I love how the sandhill is photobombing it. But again, we learned that this bird was injured. You see that it is banded and it had a radio telemetry antenna on it. And that is the leg that was lame. So we called the International Crane Foundation and reported it. And they had a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Officer who happened to be Billy Ryder Malroth, who is a birder. He works for the Fish and Game. He was monitoring this bird for the next couple days. It traveled around with the sandhills for a couple days, but it never did make it back to Necedah. This particular bird was a female, and her name, as you see, is 1711, representing the year she hatched and the number of, she was the 11th hatchling. And again, the biologist, her mate had arrived. This bird is part of the reintroduced flock in the Midwest. So they migrate from like Wisconsin down into Tennessee or Indiana. But she didn't return with him and she had succumbed to her injuries. So it's a really bittersweet experience. But in nature, you do have that circle of life. So that was a sombering experience, but then I had a really victorious experience with whooping cranes again, this time on the North Platte River in Nebraska at the Alder Bridge, actually, and you can see them dancing. And whooping cranes will migrate singly or as pairs or small family groups. The birds that are rusty brown are the young, so it's really good to see all the young. And as you see, as I pan, there are more whooping cranes. The sandhills are the gray ones in the background, and there are more whooping cranes. Yeah, there were 45 whooping cranes on this exact spot at this exact moment in Nebraska. And this is part of the wild flock. And there are only about 500 birds in the wild flock right now. So I saw 8% at that very moment. And an extraordinary observation, and one that I probably will never repeat, but pretty cool. So I just had to share that.
Oh, they were there? Or-
I had heard a hint. My sister texted me and said that she saw on Instagram that Michael Forsberg, who is a conservation photographer, had posted that there were whooping crane in the rainwater basin. And I kind of knew where to look. And sure enough, I did not know there were 40 though. I expected to be looking all over, driving many miles, looking for the one, which I have done plenty of that. And there they were. It was extraordinary. So, and I have to say, cranes are probably my favorite birds. So I get a little excited. And again, when you see the whooping cranes in Nebraska or any of the states in that central flyway, even North Dakota, South Dakota, they're part of that wild flock. And back in like the 1940s, there were 15 whooping cranes on this earth. And they have rebounded to 500 now. But since we're here in the Midwest, you can reliably see whooping cranes at Horicon Marsh. This is a picture from my spotting scope, and also at Necedah National Wildlife Refuge in Wisconsin as well. And their calls are just extraordinary as well. So if you are in that habitat and you hear this, whoops, why is it so quiet? Huh. It didn't have the effect that I wanted. It is usually a really, really loud trumpet. Don't know why it's doing that. It's okay though. It's okay. So I mentioned Michael Forsberg. He's written a new book called Into Hooperland, and he is the keynote speaker for the May IOU meeting, of which we're having a joint meeting with Nebraska and South Dakota. He is a fabulous speaker, and I cannot wait. So anyway, so those are my avian experiences. So let's turn to an encounter with mammals. And speaking of being in the right place at the right time, June 13th seems to be the right day because one year I saw this little badger, and this is in Wyoming. Although badger are here in Iowa, in fact, I understand there's some in the bison enclosure at Hickory Hills. But here's this little guy playing coy. And then one year on June 13th, I saw this badger a little bit more cooperative. And then sometimes the wildlife finds you. And yeah, this little one wandered into the backyard at my parents' farm. And this was in September, so it's probably a teenager that had gotten kicked out of the burrow. So I kind of joke around and say that I think the badger's my Patronus for any of you Harry Potter fans. So it always made my mom laugh, although she really didn't know what I was talking about. So sometimes we're out in nature and we see things that don't really belong. I was hiking in Lacey Keosauqua State Park down in Van Buren County, and I saw this shiny thing. And it turned out to be a hand-blown glass orb. And it is part of the Villages Orb Project, which is based on a similar project in Maine. And the idea is to have like a scavenger hunt where people can go out and walk the trails or even kayak or canoe the water trails and see if they can find these orbs. I happen to find number 92 from those hidden in 2024. And there's still more to find. So if you're ever down there hiking around, see if you might find one too. You know, I think we can all agree that things that get us out in nature can help engage people. So, and I just find it as another opportunity to learn, and finding something new like that was really fun. So again, learning, I think, comes naturally to a lot of us. And I have to say, when I first came, I immediately joined PRAS. And, you know, we have our programs about birds, but I also learned so much. The program on freshwater mussels blew my mind. Never did I know that fish help propagate mussels. Of course, we've had programs on wildflowers and prairie plants. Fens were so interesting to me. You know, I grew up in Southeast Wyoming. We get 13 inches of rainfall per year. So never did I know about a landform that actually collects water and that you can bounce on it. So interesting. So the fun part of learning is when we go on field trips, because then we learn from each other. There's always somebody that knows dragonflies or insects, you know, plants, trees. So I learned some of my fen plants. So the bottle gentian on the left, and I learned that you need the bumblebees that are big enough and strong enough to pull the bloom apart to get in there to gather the pollen. And then, of course, those beautiful serrated edges on the fringe gentian. So as we learn, we file away these little bits of information in our mind, and we can access that at a later time when I'm hiking somewhere else. So I see that this looks like a bit of the bud of a bottle gentian, and it certainly has got that gorgeous gentian blue. It doesn't really have that upright stance, but I learned that this is in fact a stemless gentian, and it didn't matter that I was in Switzerland. What I learned in Iowa helped inform my identification of this wildflower when I was half a world away. And that's really the fun of it, isn't it? That no matter where we're at, whether we're in Europe or in a backyard or a state park, or even downtown, you can experience nature and find enjoyment and beauty. Another opportunity, as Tom mentioned, I participated in the Iowa Master Naturalist Program. I was in the 2019 cohort, and this program is offered in the fall and in the spring, and it is a 12-week program. Each week we have a different topic. So one week it's Iowa geology, prairie plants, trees, herpetology, birds, and we had field trips and guest speakers, and it just expanded my knowledge about Iowa's flora and fauna so much. So I highly recommend this program. And wanted to share a couple of my fun observations. So does anybody know what this caterpillar is going to turn into? Now, it is fuzzy, and I have to tell you, I picked this up and I did not have any ill effects. However, don't pick up fuzzy things, fuzzy caterpillars, because you can get an allergic reaction from things. So luckily I did not, but this turns out to be the giant leopard moth. And I've never seen it hatched, but it seems like every November I find one of those caterpillars in our yard in Van Buren County. So interesting. And you can even see the little red segments in its abdomen. So cool. So butterflies, the Carner blue butterfly is an endangered species. And this I found at Necedah National Wildlife Refuge, which is where they're known to be. Their host plant is the lupin. So when you've got a good flowering bunch of that, you're almost guaranteed to see the Carner blue. Now, I'm sure somebody knows what the butterfly on the right is, and this little field mark is a clue. Anybody? When its wings are open, it's orange. I thought the wing shape was really interesting. And you can see how it would be well camouflaged in leaf litter. And this butterfly apparently winters in Iowa, and it is an eastern comma. So interesting. All right, back to a mammal encounter again. One of my Master Natural cohorts was just so entranced by scat. So I was excited that I could show her this picture of some scat on the patio. And then there were these tracks in the snow. Can anybody tell me what I was observing? And would it help if I told you I was in Wyoming? Oh, yes, indeed. Yep. And I learned that Iowa typically doesn't have porcupines, which is astounding to me because states all around us do, but Iowa typically doesn't. But indeed, this guy had taken up residence in the elm tree in the backyard. And then my mom and I encountered this mother and the baby is called a porcupet. Yeah, and they have usually one young at a time. Every once in a while, they'll have twins. But this was so interesting because we had stopped the car. She came over to investigate us. And when she got our scent, she literally turned tail and skedaddled back to the edge and then backed herself into the sagebrush and the tall grass and took this upright stance. And she's perfectly camouflaged. You would not know she was there had we not seen her do that. So, it's one thing to drive by and see the porcupine. It's one thing, another thing to watch it have that behavior. And it was really fun. So it's fun to seek those different opportunities. And I always like to find different places to explore. So a couple years ago, I discovered Irvine Prairie, and it's become one of my favorites. And when I turn down the county road and I see the silo, it makes me smile. So I wanted to share with you some of my observations from a day in July in 2023. Of course, you've got the native orange butterfly weed, and then rattlesnake master, which is a forb and really peculiar, but very, very striking. The gray-headed coneflower, the false sunflower, and then the wild quinine was just abundant that particular time. And then the native monarda or the bee balm. And then the purple prairie clover, which I think looks a little bit like a firework. So I had a really quiet, contemplative time there at Irvine. And then I decided to go to Hickory Hills to look for fungi. So as I was driving, I came across this red-tailed hawk, and it flushed off the road. And as it lifted off the ground, it had a serpent. It had a snake in its talons. It dropped it, and then it went and perched. But notice how golden the nape and the head of this bird is. It's a little bit different coloring, and it kind of made me, pause. And have you ever been out in nature and you just had like a sense of a spiritual kind of moment, or a moment where you just feel something in your heart or in your spirit? Well, that's how I felt about this red-tailed hawk. And some of you have heard me say that red-tailed hawks are my spirit bird, and that, call me a goof, but in some traditions and cultures, hawks are actually thought to be messengers from other realms. And so again, this experience gave me pause. And later on, I looked up the meaning of a hawk with a serpent, and it is said to represent transformation, renewal, and rebirth. And that really struck me because it was the morning that my father died on this day. So call me a goof or not, but I think that hawk had a message for me, and it spoke to me in that moment. So we're going to change our focus here for a minute. And when we are out in nature, depending what we're doing, our focus does make a difference in terms of how we experience things. So if I'm fishing or I'm mountain biking or, bird watching, I'm going to have a particular intention. So I wanted to share an experience I shared with my niece in Yellowstone. And this is the Artemisia geyser in the geyser basin. And Macy was there to paint. And as we walked to this geyser, we saw the fuchsia, shooting star wildflowers. We encountered a pine marten, and then we had a marmot that was keeping us company. But again, her intent was to paint. And so what she was seeing or hearing and feeling was different than me, because she was intent on transcribing it to her canvas. And I watched her pick up a little bit of purple, and I thought, gosh, I don't see the purple. But she did. And she was using the purple to create those shadows. And it was just a really lovely experience to watch her paint and to share that moment with her. And, so my focus when I'm birding is I'm looking in the trees. But once I started looking to the earth, and once I learned about fungi in Master Naturalist, a whole new world opened up for me. And so here's a couple of my favorites. These little orange mycena are about the size of a $50. And their orange pigment is antimicrobial. So interesting. And then who knew that there were purple fungi? Just blew my mind. And when you're looking at fungi, you notice, is it growing on wood or is it growing in the ground? Sometimes fungi grows on each other, which is so interesting. And then you notice, does it have pores like the violet-toothed polypore? Or does it have gills like the purple and white deceiver? And when you look to identify them, you look for field marks just like you do birds. So for this one, the gills are uneven. There's some little hairs on the stalk and there's striations or reticulation on the stalk. That helps you weed out the other species. And then notice that I dug it up, and that helps because sometimes there's a collar or a structure that will again help you identify it down to the species level. Now, this fungi was so exciting to find because it was featured in the lecture that Dr. Elizabeth Swain gave us at Master Naturalist. And she showed a video of this where when it rains, these little discs inside the bird nest fungi will be catapulted out. And that is how the spores are distributed. It was so interesting. And then when I found this, and I found this at Hickory Hills, I was elated because it was so cool. And it's cool because it's fuzzy too. Lots of different things to pay attention to. And who would not be charmed by bubblegum pink fungi? Come on now. And these are again, some of my favorites. The pink Marulius is almost always associated with the false turkey tail, which is what these guys are. And I saw this at Hickory Hills, and I'm hoping that the log that I always found this on is still there after they've done all the reclamation work. Cross my fingers. And then these little bleeding mycena, again, they're mycena, so they group together and they're fairly small. Another name is the bleeding fairy helmets. So if you crush the stem or the gills, they will actually emit a latex-like substance that looks like blood. So it's got that very evocative name. So interesting. And these are actually bioluminescent, which I've not seen them glowing in the dark, but that would be so cool. And then slime mold. Slime mold makes me happy, you guys. When I find slime mold, I'm so excited. And this is a picture from my cell phone, believe it or not. And it just looked like a bit of fuzzy fur on a log. And then when you look closer and you get that close focus, this is what you see. So sometimes slime mold looks like this. Sometimes it looks like the sprinkles on your cupcake. Sometimes it looks like snowflakes. And then sometimes it looks like dog vomit. Yep. They can vary in terms of the size. And slime mold is interesting because they can even find their way through a maze. Yeah, so, but it is so interesting what you're going to encounter. And I'm just that kind of nerd that I was excited when I found the dog vomit slime mold because I've got a life list for fungi too. So, and I found this down in Lacey Keosauqua. So, and I can even tell you the trail that I was on. So I'm just that kind of nerd, I'm afraid. So now let's turn our attention to the sky. And we all enjoy seeing the patterns in the clouds. And then there are my brother-in-law and my friend Sarah love to identify clouds. So whether you're looking at this cumulus big thunderhead out west or the mammatus clouds, which are pretty cool, these are almost always associated with hail though. They're cool looking, but, or sometimes you find some really rare clouds too. And these that look like waves, does anybody know what these are called? They're named after a guy. So the Kelvin Helmholtz clouds, and I saw these here in Iowa when I was down doing Hawk Watch with my friend Mark Prescholt. And apparently they're really rare. So if you have an occasion to see them, count yourself lucky. The only other time I've seen them was this past February in Wyoming with my siblings. So yeah, pretty cool. And of course, we know that the night sky gives us wondrous things. And I think David Voights, who writes our In the Sky column, I've learned so much about astronomy from you, David, so thank you. And these pictures I actually took through my spotting scope when I was home in Wyoming. So I had that gorgeous dark sky. And this is the lunar eclipse from May 2022. And then I was lucky and got to see the comet last October over Horicon Marsh. But I think my favorite astronomical object is the Beehive Cluster. And I learned about this from you, David. And he said, you know, when you get it in the binoculars, it's going to look like buzzing bees. It's going to twinkle and shimmer. And indeed, that is exactly what my sister and I could see when we saw it one June in Wyoming. And I just have to teach you how to find it because it's that cool. So you can use the Big Dipper to, you know, triangulate down. I usually look for Leo in this curved neck and head of Leo. And then if you find Pollux, the bright star in Gemini, whoopsie, there we go. Then you can look for just a fuzziness in between Regulus and Pollux. And you can see the fuzziness with your naked eye. And once you get it in binoculars, you're going to see it in that full view. And it's really cool.
Yeah. Next month in early May, Mars, which is right, will be right in the Beehive cluster.
Oh, excellent.
So we'll keep your, and it's right now, Mars is near the twin stars of Gemini.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So for those of you on Zoom, you might not have heard David. He said that Mars is right now between, it's really next to Pollux and Castor of Gemini. So that's pretty cool. And in May, early May, Mars is going to be near the Beehive cluster. So that's an even better reason to try to find the Beehive cluster and enjoy it as well. Thank you, David. We know over the last year that the Aurora Borealis has been putting on a good show. And while I've seen the lights here in Iowa, I really can't take a picture like my brother can. And I just love this because, yeah, this is the Northern Lights at home. And we know that, again, I've talked about the dark skies in Wyoming. There is some light pollution in Wyoming, believe it or not. And light pollution is a problem. We know that it affects negatively, you know, birds, insects, bats, migrating turtles, but it also affects us negatively. And the American Medical Association has written that it can be linked to metabolic disorders, increased incidence of diabetes, and maybe even cancer. So there's some really simple things that we can do. And David's conservation article this month is about light pollution and how we can do these things that are simple to help promote dark skies. Just turn off your lights, close your curtains. If you really need a porch light, consider getting like a red bulb because it doesn't necessarily interfere with like the animals and such. Advocate for dark sky ordinances if you hear that your city's redoing their street lamps, and support dark sky designations. You're starting to see more and more places being designated as such. International Dark Sky Week's coming up, and this book, I have to say, is enchanting. So night magic. The Hawkeye Library has a copy of this. It's currently checked out, but I can put it back on the shelf. I'm just entranced by it. So again, those little things that we can do to contribute are meaningful. And we know that when we love things, when we're engaged and we're excited, we want to do things to help protect. And that informs conservation decisions. And we have members of our PRAS group who are helping to do a species inventory at a private property south of Waterloo. We've had field trips there. This is at mitigation. And Ken Heyer has got a spreadsheet of like hundreds of species, whether they are insects, plants, trees, birds, reptiles, other herps that are there. And again, when you know what's in the habitat, you can make better conservation decisions. I popped into that property one September day and found those gorgeous scarlet cardinal flowers and that cool crab spider, which I knew what it was because I had seen a beautiful picture of a crab spider on Ken Heyer's blog, Speaking of Nature. And I had learned that from Ken, so I knew what it was. Another way you can contribute is to support organizations like the Black Hawk Wildlife Rehab Project. And I had the occasion to release this rehabbed painted turtle. And I took it back to its home river up by Marengo. And when it slipped into the water, it really, my heart just lifted. It was really gratifying. So whether you volunteer, and even if you help with transport, you have to go through an orientation, and they've just scheduled one. So thought I would share that today. But also, you could donate supplies or money, or sometimes they put a call out on Facebook. They need fish to feed to the turtles or the mink that they're rehabbing. So, you know, if you're so inclined, you can support their organization. They do good work. And PRAS has also supported their organization. We've helped purchase some testing supplies for lead and stuff when they rehab the eagles and such. And also, if you see a turtle that is in need of assistance, you can do that as well. This, of course, is a Blanding's turtle, which is an endangered species here in Iowa. And this was at Hickory Hills. You can see that it has been injured before. And I literally stopped traffic and directed traffic around it until it got safely to the shoulder. If you do see an endangered species, the Iowa DNR would appreciate knowing, because in particular, they kind of like to monitor these species that are of concern. I was so pleased to see this turtle. It's actually my favorite turtle. We know that a lot of you help us with Christmas count, and you might do a feeder count in your backyard, or you do the great backyard bird count. Some of you gardeners might have a monarch way station, but did you know that there's a firefly atlas where you can help gather data about fireflies? So you will see me on the bike trail in the summer stopped, and I'll be watching the flashing, and I'll be noting the pattern and submitting that to the Xerces Society. And I'll tell you what, it is magical to combine the citizen science with fireflies. So cool. And I just got word from Stephanie Shepard from the Iowa DNR. They now have a bee atlas. Yes, that I just forwarded information. And I can put information about that on our website too. So those of you who want to help participate in that project, you know, it doesn't always have to be about birds. It's whatever catches your curiosity. A couple other surveys that I do routinely is I do a winter raptor survey and then the frog and toad survey. And I learned about the frog and toad survey when Stephanie Shepard came to talk to us about it. And I have to say, I'm enamored. I love frogs and toads. And a little quiz here. Does anybody know what this frog is? And maybe if I play the call. It's really quiet. Sounds like a banjo. Ow, bow. Green frog, yes, exactly. And it's not called the, well, it might be called the green frog because that's its color. But you can also identify it because it's got this dorsal ridge that goes about halfway down its back. So cool. And then this little guy, this is a Western species in Iowa. And here's another example of, nature finding me. It's in the dog dish. Yeah, and so cute. It's got orange freckles. That's a field mark for this guy, and its claws. Does anybody know what this is? A spadefoot, yes. Yes, somebody knows their frog and toads. So excited. This little guy's no bigger than my thumb. He is little. And they've got a cool call, which you probably can't hear. Oops. And this species is interesting. Again, it's in the western part of the state. And I learned about it when I trained for my frog and toad survey. So when I was in Wyoming and I saw this guy, I knew what it was. And they're an eruptive species. So they'll kind of lay low until you get a big heavy rain. And we have buffalo wallows where the bison actually wore the divots in the earth from, being on the plains. And so one night we came home from Cheyenne and had dueling spadefoot courses. So cool. And I was really excited to tell Stephanie Shepard that not only had I heard one, but I had seen one. And when we are excited about things, we want to protect them. So I'm like, I found my people. Look. So, and this sign was at Horicon Marsh in Wisconsin, but it could also apply to the road in Wyoming that my mom and I were walking when we went to go get the mail, and we encountered this Western diamondback rattlesnake. Yeah, and you see, it knew it had the upper hand. It didn't rattle at us. It did not strike, and we gave it wide berth. But clearly, I am not afraid of snakes. I think they're fascinating. And this is a little hognose snake. You can see its little pushed up nose. This was at one of the Master Naturalist field trips. And this particular species is interesting because if it encounters a predator, it will feign death. It will flip over, it will writhe around, it will appear to bleed from the mouth. It would win the Oscar for drama. So how can you not be excited about the wondrous, world of nature when you encounter species like this? And clearly, we enjoy sharing our stories. And that's what part of the fun is when we get together. What did you see? Oh, I saw this. You share it with people. And that just enriches your experience. So I have to introduce my Mark, who is my chauffeur for my surveys. And clearly I'm enthusiastic. And he has been enduring this enthusiasm for nature for 30 years. So kudos to him. Some of you have met my twin sister because she's been here birding with us before, but this is Crystal, and she volunteered for the Rocky Mountain Raptor Center in Fort Collins, Colorado. And you have to have advanced in your skill set to handle the golden eagles. And it was extraordinary to see that bird on the end of her arm. We have golden eagles that nest within 4 miles of my parents' house. Just, again, extraordinary.
This is captive bird that couldn't.
Yep, that was one of their education birds.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Right, yeah. So our whole family enjoys the out of doors. You've seen some of my brother's pictures. And then here's my mom. We're at the Scottsbluff National Monument, and it was a special place because she grew up in Scottsbluff, Gearing, Nebraska. And you see her there with her binoculars. And like I said, we would go driving to watch the sunset over Laramie Peak, and we'd go, Mom, you want to go birding? She did many raptor routes with us. but she was always up to go birding with us. And so we would drive to go to Feehaw Corner is what we called it. And Feehaw is the bird code name for ferruginous hawk. The Latin name for this bird is Buteo regalius. And indeed, it's a stunning bird. And this bird is fearless. And it would just sit there on this fence post. And Mom said, wow, that is a handsome bird. And she was right. So, so we got to share that experience, and she and I would do informal Christmas bird counts together and whatnot. So, but my mom left us in February, and it's not going to be the same birding without her, but her and my dad really instilled in us and gave us a wonderful childhood of enjoying nature and having that healthy respect and, you know, doing what you want and finding the life that is meaningful to you and embracing those opportunities to learn. So I thank them for that. And I'm going to leave you one more time at Irvine Prairie. I think this cloud formation looks like a red-tailed hawk in flight. And again, this is where I can hear the Western meadowlark singing. And when I'm there, I feel like it's singing just for me as a reminder of home. So now I'm inviting you to go out and wander. And I wonder what you're going to discover. So I wouldn't be a librarian if I didn't offer you a book list. And indeed, so these are great books. Some of you might remember that Suzanne Bartlett Hackenmiller spoke to our group a number of years ago. And Connie Svoboda has been trained in forest bathing. She's a certified forest guide, and she's actually leading a walk tomorrow for Fontana, but I'm signed up for this opportunity in May. And it's really interesting. And they will take you through, you know, talk about changing your focus. There will be a time where you're just listening and noticing what you'll see, or, you know, you are just, you know, feeling the textures of the leaves or feeling the textures of a particular plant. And I just encourage you to join us if you're so inclined, because it's such a different, immersive activity. If you've got questions, you could contact Connie or call Fontana. But at any rate, so are there any questions for me? And let me see if there's any.
And how did you end up in Iowa?
So the question for the people on Zoom is how I ended up in Iowa. It was my first job offer out of grad school. So yeah, I went to grad school. Oh, thank you, Sue. I went to grad school at the University of Arizona, and I worked at Southeastern Community College in Burlington. So Lacey Keosauqua, Geode State Park, the Mississippi River. So, yeah.
Thank you for your enthusiasm. You made this all
Thank you, Mary Jo. I know it can be a bit much. I'm unapologetically excited about things.
Do know what curiosity did for the cat.
I know, Chuck. So, well, thank you all for your attention.
Candace,
Yes.
I was wondering, is that dog vomit mushroom edible?
I don't think so, but you could try. You know, they say, you know, with mushrooms, you can try it once. Some of them, yeah. Thank you.
But a slime mold is really not a It's
of fungi, right? David's right. Slime mold is actually in its own kingdom. So it's not a fungi per se. It's a single-celled organism. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's phenomenal what you find when you're out there. Oh, there are some, let's see. Oh, so my sister has a question. Thank you, Crystal. Oh, and my colleague Lindsay, oh, look at the fungi and the frog icons. My colleagues at work are so good. They hear so much of this. When we have a window bird strike at my library, we get an ornithology lesson. We had a coot. Josh and I were working, the only ones working one Friday, and you don't expect waterfowl to hit the side of the building. Yeah, so I brought it in, showed Josh, and then I took it to Hartman. So, but yes, so my sister's question, how do you identify plants in the field, and are there good field guides to use? Yes, so I have the iNaturalist CCAP that on my phone that will use AI to help offer an identification. And of course, there's particular field guides for plants, prairie plants, trees and such. So thank you for the question, Crystal. Let's see. Oh, let me look at
Okay, good.
Yes. Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
That was just beautiful presentation.
Yeah.
And stories about your life. We all have so many stories to share. It's nice to hear those. It's been really popular last month and this month too. Really, I'm curious, that landing turtle that you had in
Mhm.
videos, when did you see that?
That was, I believe, in 2021 or 22.
Because Ken and I photographed that same one. I remember that broken shell
Yeah,
way in the back in the pond.
that's what you had told me. Yeah,
I was curious.
yeah. It
I know
was,
that guy.
yeah, it was up on the road. It was past where you turn to go to the archery shelter. It was towards, yeah,
This was way on the back.
I
side.
know. That's pretty cool.
Cool.
According to Google, the dog vomit slime mold is technically edible.
Oh,
Canada, eligible food sourcing, not recommended for consumption.
I love it, Joel. Thank you for that confirmation. So you could technically eat it, but not, yeah.
Get at your own peril.
Indeed, yeah.
Some of your black walnut syrup on it probably tastes pretty good.
There you go. There you go. Let's see. I think that was all.
Any other questions for comments?
I guess I've got a comment.
Yeah.
I'll just mention all 4 of the books that Candace recommended there at the end are available at the Hawkeye Library if anyone would like to check them out. And also right now, we've got a student art show going on, so there's an opportunity to see some really beautiful artwork that our students put out. And also, it's Poetry Week right now, Poetry Month, so we've got a bunch of poetry activities that you can take part into if you'd like to learn about found poetry, such as spine poetry or blackout poetry. So stop by Hawkeye Library, take a look. There's a lot of cool stuff there that you might be interested in.
And just because you're not a student or affiliated with Hawkeye, doesn't mean that you can't check out books at the Hawkeye Library. Just come on in, we'll get you a library card, and yeah, so.
You talk about nature and stuff with Candace while you're there too. so.
Yeah,
Another lesson.
if you want to get me distracted, all you gotta do is talk nature with me, huh, Josh?